Hello, everyone. We are here with a friend of the show, Kevin Farrington. Had him on a few times before, I believe, for different things, different videos. You are a member of the Plattsburgh Citizens Coalition, correct?
I am. Yes, I am, Matt. Thanks for having me.
And we are here to get a sort of update on the status of the DRI and where we're at with it as a community, and maybe learning a bit more about, what's happening. I think the last time that our camp really spoke on it was almost a year ago when we did a sort of timeline of events for the DRI. But over the past 11 months since we put that video out, there's been a lot of developments, and I think it's been hard for people to kind of follow all the twists and turns. So if you could just basically, maybe to start, give us just a quick lay of the land. Like, where are we at with this project?
Okay, sure. I'll try, Matt. It is it can feel confusing at times. So there's a few approvals that have to be granted. The city entered into an agreement to give the land away to Prime and give them $4.3 million quite a while ago, but it depends on a lot of permits and approvals. So what permits do they need? They need a county planning board approval. They need a city planning board approval, and they need a city zoning board approval. And they also need a pilot agreement approval from the county. Now, for those who don't know, the pilot is the payment in lieu of taxes. And it's basically a way of allowing someone to not pay taxes or not pay as much in taxes. And that's a major issue. We can come back to that later. So where are they in that process? Well, they went to the county planning board, and the county planning board denied the site plan. They said, no, this is not a good plan, and this is going to have an adverse impact on the county. Now, mind you, the city is the hub for county services. You think about social services, Department of Health, Office for the Aging, veterans, children's services, not to mention the state and federal services, Social Security, DMV. So there's a lot of services. So the county planning board denied it. So that was kind of a big deal. What does that mean to the local boards? Well, the county planning board is just advisory. So that all that means to the local planning board is they have to have a supermajority. In other words, a majority plus one vote. That is a 5-member board. So instead of a majority of 3 people, the planning board would have to have 4 people to vote positive to approve it. Now, let me be clear. The county planning board did not disapprove. They approved the zoning board issues. There's a subdivision of land, and there's a variance to have first floor residential. The zoning board did not take issue with either of those. Or let me repeat that. The county planning board approved both of those. So the zoning board now gets it back, and they just have to treat it just a majority. But the planning board needs a majority plus 1. So that's what happened at the county level. So now what's left is you've got planning board, zoning board, and that's what's going on. And of course, with the COVID-19, we can talk more about that later, but that has really put a strain on the situation. Like, how do you even conduct these board meetings? And, where you were getting, 50 plus people showing up in opposition and people picketing out front, now you can't do that. Should they even continue? People are looking at the governor. He's issued some executive orders about what you can and can't do. So they're trying to toe the line. But of course, it really disenfranchises the public to a significant degree.
Has there been, a mechanism for public comment or public input on these meetings, despite not being able to be there in person?
Yeah, that's a good question. So last Monday night, Monday of this week, the planning board met. They opened up public comment at about 11 o'clock at night by Zoom.
That was Monday, 2 days ago, the 27th? Okay.
Yeah. the Monday before that, the zoning board met. They opened up public comment it was almost midnight. It was at least 11:30, and closed it a little after midnight. And, by that time, we had one person who was there, and they said, I've been sitting, it was Scott, he was sitting in his office. And he said, I've been in my office since 6:30 and 7 o'clock this morning. Now it's midnight, and, you're giving me 3 minutes to speak by Zoom. I'm tired. You're tired. We're all tired. Is anything even registering? So look, we're all living by Zoom right now. We're all living virtually, and some pros and cons, but it's tough. It's tough. And when you're doing that at midnight, it's really tough.
Is it common for the meetings to run that late, or is that because of the way they're being run virtually right now?
I wouldn't call it common. No, I think it's, in that example, they had a couple things on the agenda. So they went through, the Vilas home was on there, and a couple of residential things were on there. And so by the time you get to it, you might not start it till, I'm not sure what time, might have been after 9 o'clock by the time they even think about starting DRI stuff. And, I'll say this, the Prime takes a lot of latitude. They really have, they bring the staff in. They've really been, in my opinion, very bullyish. They're really being a bunch of bullies, dictating, interrupting, telling the board what they can do, what they should do, with little support from anybody on the city side. City staff is timid. The city attorney, it's questionable. PCC attorney has asked him to recuse because, his primary duty is to the city mayor and the council. He's corporation counsel. Now, the common council is the petitioner, along with the community development office. So those departments that you would normally rely on for technical support, they're the applicant. So you've got all these lawyers ganged up. They've got the Prime attorney. The city hired Mark Schachner, who's a special attorney for secret process. They've got the corporation counsel, who's really the common counsel's attorney. And you've got these poor planning board members, zoning board members. They don't have anyone to turn to for support. Now, interestingly, we understand that just this week, the zoning board moved to remove the city's attorney from being their attorney, and is getting an attorney from out of the county somewhere. I'm not sure who that is yet.
Was there a concern about a conflict of interest, or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, the thing is look, I know Dean Schneller pretty well. I work with him. He's a terrific guy, and he's a terrific attorney. It's not a personal thing. And, Dean walked it through. He said, look, I don't stand to make money. I don't stand to lose money. I give you good advice. That's all I do. But here's the thing. And he said it himself in the meeting, let's say, for example, a planning board or zoning board denies it. Now, you've got the mayor and the council. These people are gung-ho. They've been working with this corporation for years. They really want to give them $4 million of taxpayer money. They really want them to build this massive residential, monstrosity downtown. They really want this to happen. The planning board goes and denies that. Well, you can bet your paycheck that the city's going to challenge that in court. Okay, now you're in court with the city against the city council against the city planning board. Now, what does the corporation council do at that point? And he was asked that question, and he answered it honestly. He said, well, that would be a true conflict. Those were his words. That would be a true conflict. And he said that I might defend the city council, but I would definitely not defend the planning board or zoning board. Well, there you go. If it was you, would you want your attorney knowing that they work primarily for the other side, first and foremost, and you're a second priority? So that's sort of a big deal, but it gives you a glimpse of the pressure that's going on inside the city politics. When Colin Reed appoints guaranteed yes votes to the planning board, he appointed two people made them both regular voting members, and relegated the longest standing tenured member to alternate. And, is that illegal? No. Technically, the way the bylaws are written, the mayor can decide who's a regular and who's an alternate. But the tradition has always been, the precedence has always been, when you first come on, you're an alternate for the first 2 years, 1 to 2 years, and then you work your way in. Makes sense, right? Well, what he did is he took this person and made him a regular member. In fact, what he did was he added an 8th member to a 7-member board. Explain that to me. How do you do that with a straight face? Fortunately for him, John Canosa retired a few months later, so 8 came back down to 7. But, if that's not a sore thumb sticking out, I don't know what is. And then a second, now, we know these two people, they don't care about facts or anything else. They were put there because they're going to give a yes vote for Colin Reed, and that's that. And, it's Reg Carter and Loretta Rietzema. Loretta said now at 2 meetings, she said, my son can't wait to move in there. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know planning board, let me tell you, that is a highly inappropriate statement to make by a board member during a public meeting. And
in case anyone doesn't know, that's referring to the market rate apartments that are going to be going into they're proposed to be going into the Durkee Street lot when they turn into this sort of multi-use residential commercial building.
Right.
I recently read online that the rates for the apartments were confirmed. I think I read $1,200 was the starting rate for those spaces. Is that correct? Did you see that somewhere?
I read that. I've seen different numbers floated around, but I have seen starting. I think the smallest. These are very small and yet high priced. I think they square footage. Don't quote me on this, but I think they start as small as something like 700 square feet.
I've also seen that figure thrown around. Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty tiny, but then you look at what's going on in this coronavirus and the economic impacts that are going to ensue, and a lot of the restaurants are, there's a lot of question about how these businesses survive. Do gyms survive, and bagel shops, and karate studios and restaurants, and so it was already questionable about whether you want to give nearly half of your $10 million away to a corporate interest. And now you look at businesses which are struggling to even exist anymore.
Yeah.
And you can't help but question, well, hold on a second. Maybe we should pump the brakes for a minute and really reassess this. Maybe this is a time, forget revitalize. How about survive this, economic blow?
Well, I have seen a call from some citizens online and talking to some people that, maybe in response to the pandemic and the effect it's having on local business, is there a way to pull out of what we're doing now and redirect these funds to saving what's left of downtown as we are seeing businesses struggle to stay open, and maybe they do need some extra relief? Like, is that an option? Because I've seen some heavy criticism that we're continuing to go through with this when people think there could be a possibility of directing those funds to some sort of relief for local businesses.
Well, I think that's not only a good question, it's the obvious question that you would be remiss if you didn't stop, pause, and ask that question and, pursue that a little bit. Look, this is all brand new, this whole COVID thing. But, I've been, if you've been watching the governor, I've been watching him semi-regular. I think generally you think people think he's doing a very good job. I do. Not necessarily always a huge fan of his. He's been doing a great job, though. He seems like a pretty reasonable guy. And I think that he would be reasonable if approached on the issue.
And he would be an authority on that, right? Because the money is coming down from the state.
It's a governor's program. It's coming through mostly through Department of State and ESD, Empire State Development. So yeah, now one thing, as long as you bring it up though, because this has been a question, or I'm going to say, I'm trying not to use the word lie, but I'm trying to think of a better word. I'll just use the word lie. This has been a lie that has been told and repeated by several council members and the mayor himself. And what they say is, we have no choice. This is what we must do with our DRI. The state told us. And if we don't do this, if this prime project falls through, we lose the money. We not only lose the money, but we might harm our relationship with Albany in the future. So that's something that's been said. And, that's you see this fear-mongering, this gaslighting type of approach to politics sometimes. Usually my motto is, when you see people trying to use fear to convince you of something, to me, that's a red flag. I throw it up and I go, oh, okay, something's funny here. So this is something you hear. Now I'm going to read you, Matt. This is an excerpt from the DRI handbook. And this is a frequently asked question because this comes up.
So this is the guide that was given to us, the city, as we applied for this grant, right?
Right. And it's a guidebook for use today.
Okay.
And the question is, what happens to DRI funds if a project does not move forward? Here's the answer. It's short. It says, as with most grant programs, there may be unspent funds that need to be reallocated if a grantee declines an award, is unable to undertake a project, or completes the project under budget. Funds that are unspent by a grantee will be repurposed to one or more projects included in the DRI Strategic Investment Plan for the community for which the funds were intended, consistent with program rules.
So you would keep the money and put it towards other projects?
You would repurpose it. And I've got to believe during the COVID-19, got to believe they would even be open to ideas for perhaps revisiting and amending the program that was approved.
Right. So just so people are on the same page, the development of the Durkee Street lot is just one of, I think there were maybe 8 other. I think there was 9
Something
projects
like that.
involved.
8,
branding and revitalizing the streetscape, beautification kind of stuff. So the money isn't going exclusively to this prime development deal. There were other aspects of the DRI, and that's the kind of thing we're talking about. If we say that the funds would be redistributed to that, or you're saying that possibly we could talk about amending those and having it be more of something that would be more relevant to our immediate needs. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Case in point, you look at, and this is what makes these fear-mongering and lies really so unconscionable, is that the council repurposed money. And you probably know, Matt, that the food co-op had about $200,000, I think it was, that was earmarked for them. They ended up declining that money. And I don't want to speak for them, but from what I understand, it wasn't just one reason. It was a variety of reasons. Part of that, though, was their opposition to, building this, them not being considered, this housing project.
Right.
That money was repurposed by the mayor and council over to Farmers Market on Green Street. So for them to sit there in public forum and in written letter and say what they said, which, I'll give you an example, Mike Kelly said it right here in his letter. I want to talk about the Mike Kelly letter. He said,
please.
He said, there is no other project planned for Durkee Street. If this does not go through, then there will not be another chance, at least in the framework of the DRI. The state will take their money back and move it to a more deserving location. This will also harm our relationship with Albany, and future monies will be less available for Plattsburgh. So
And that's a letter that he's Ward 4 counselor, I think, right? Or Ward 2, actually. Ward 2 Mike Kelly.
Yeah, that is Ward 2 Mike Kelly, Hot Mike, who wrote this letter dated April 10th. And
of this year?
April 10th, 2020. And he wrote that's addressed to it was meant for the zoning board, comment to the zoning board. It starts out, I'm writing to express my wholehearted support for Prime Durkee Street Development Plan.
See, that's it. As I talk to more and more people about these sorts of things, I'm putting myself in the position of the people on the zoning board. I don't imagine that if it is a paid position, I don't imagine it's very much.
It's not. It's volunteer.
Okay. So, and these are people who have lives outside of this, and I know they're not spending every waking moment researching and fact-checking. So if an authority figure like long-standing councilman Mike Kelly comes and says that, my first instinct wouldn't be to be skeptical of a statement like that. I would go, well, obviously Mike, who's been working on this, would know how the grant works, and if he's saying they're going to take the money away if we don't use it for this, then I don't know. It's really outlandish.
It's outlandish, and it's mind-boggling. If you sit there and you think about that for a minute, first of all, it's false. It's a lie. You use whatever word you want to use. It's a lie. Number two, it's knowingly a lie. You've repurposed money, and you ought to be knowing what's going on with when I can read the DRI handbook. I don't know why I
personally looked that up myself when I first heard people making that claim. I was like, well, let me look at the materials and see what the state is actually saying, because I was hearing a little bit of back and forth about whether or not it was true. So I thought I can go to the source, and even me, as someone who's not working on the grant, I can get access to the information and fact check it. I don't know.
And what did you were you able to find the answer?
I was able to find exactly what you read from the handbook.
Yeah.
And even when I read that, it still made me feel confused that the counselors were putting out the information. That wasn't the first time I'd heard someone from the city say that we have to use this money for this particular project, and that we will lose the money if we don't. I'd heard that elsewhere, and I don't know. I keep seeing people who are put into situations like the people on the zoning board who are fed information very intentionally and asked to make a decision based on the information they're given. And if that information is filtered or just straight up false, I don't know. I think it goes to illustrate how broken things can be locally with our politics.
Well, I agree. I think so. This is what we're dealing with. So, and it's not only false, it's knowingly false. Mm-hmm. It's recklessly false. It's false with the deliberation to deceive people into approving something using fear-mongering. Mm-hmm. And as you said, given his position, it's arguably an abuse of power. So, look, the Plattsburgh Citizens Coalition, from the day we started with a mission statement, which is basically to advance the interests and smart development of the community. And we also started with a pledge, and our pledge was to be factual and honest. Mm-hmm. And we've stuck to that to the very best of our ability. And we've taken a lot of abuse, and we've taken a lot of criticism. And usually, the old saying, when the facts are on your side, you argue the facts. When the facts aren't on your side, you pound your fist on the table and you attack the messenger. And that's what you're seeing from City Hall. They just want to attack us. And I'll tell you what, we put the pledge out there. We've told, and I'll say it again, Matt, if anybody finds something that you think is false, that because of our pledge to be an honest and fact-based, we'll recant any statement that if something is untrue. So you take, like, for example, we did a flyer.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, it comes across, it's got punch. It comes across as a, a short attention span kind of, bullet interest item, no question. But, the counselors decided that, two of them, what I'm talking about. Their names escape me. I'll tell you in a second. Two of them decided to come downtown and start walking around.
I think it was Gibbs and Moore.
And thank you. It was, Gibbs, and who was the other one?
And I think it was Jeff Moore.
And Jeff Moore, yeah.
I believe so.
No, you're right, it was.
Yeah, because there was at some point, I think it was, well, never mind. Yes, it was them, I believe.
Gibbs and Jeff Moore. So, but they didn't really come down with the idea of talking to people. They came down with the idea to tell people, this is a lie, and we want you to know that. You just lack information. If you sign, if you're one of 2,000 people that signed this petition, or one of 600 or 800 that signed that petition, you just did it ignorantly because you're just not smart. And let me tell you the real information. So they walked around. Well, they didn't get very far, because I talked to a lot of people that they talked to, and they just got lit up, left up, down one side and down the other. People told them how much they opposed this project and why. So they got an earful. So that didn't go very well.
I do remember them saying that they admittedly did not get very far, but they didn't say why.
That's why. They didn't get far. Yeah. But, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I think it's worth taking a quick peek at. It starts out with, we're giving $4.3 million to this out-of-town corporation. That's a fact. This corporation will receive multi-million-dollar tax break, meaning your taxes will increase. Now, that one is taking a lot of heat. Your taxes will increase. Now, look, a tax equation is a complex equation. There's so many factors: property values, revenue, expenses, all, costs. It's a complex equation, but there is several documents that have dissected the pilot agreement. And it's clear to see, if you read if you read a few of them, and especially the one that the school district wrote.
I was going to say, I remember the school district being very vocal against the pilot agreement.
It dissects the pilot agreement with surgical precision. By the way, it also registers a lot of complaints about the dishonesty that was presented. So again, we get back to, we're talking about the issue, but you also find yourselves talking about the dishonesty of the people in City Hall. Anyways, what did the school district say about it? The school district said that this is going to have an adverse impact, even with the most conservative assumption about how many children might be in there. This is going to have an adverse impact on the tax base. So, people say, well, right now it's a parking lot. It doesn't pay any school taxes, right? And that's a really overly simplistic and sort of ignorant way to approach it. And if you hear that, again, if you hear a counselor say that, some people say that, you forgive them. But when a counselor says that, that is beyond ignorant. That's deceiving. Because a parking lot doesn't send kids to school. Parking lot doesn't demand city services. They don't demand inspections by the health department. They don't do any number of things that demand city services. So the real question is, anytime you develop inside a municipality, you create a need for services. Do you or do you not pay your fair share for the services you will receive? If the answer is no, then what does that mean? So you're going to send so many kids to school, you're going to create a burden, a services burden, an expense on the municipality, the county, the city, the school. You're not paying your fair share of that expense. Who does? And so in that sense, this can be backed up with factual information. I could break this out and show you line by line. But the fact of the matter is, this will have an adverse impact on the school district, and it'll do it for at least 15 years. So for 15 years, every other taxpayer in the school district will pay more in order to compensate for the relief being granted to the prime development through this proposed pilot agreement. And let me tell you,
that 15 years is the length of their agreement?
It's fluctuated. I think at first it was 20 years.
Okay, I do remember that, yep.
Which was pretty outrageous. I think they backed it off to something a little less, and I'm not sure. But I think there was also some deception there, if I recall. They stretched it out. I'd have to bring that out. I don't quite remember the details. But the fact is clear that this pilot will have an adverse effect on everybody's taxes. So in that sense, your tax will increase. Will your actual total tax bill go up as a direct result versus an indirect result? Well, that remains to be seen. Nobody can say that, but we stand by that statement. It's a fact. It has a negative effect on taxpayers' burden. To just sit there and say that's a lie, it's not a lie. It's the truth, and people should be aware of it. And I think if more people were aware, then they would be furious. They should be furious. People who know are furious.
That's
people
true.
Who aren't furious just don't know. But come and take a minute and look at that pilot. Go on our website and read the letter signed by Jay LeBrun. Our attorney said that he shared it with all of his associates because it is the textbook example of the proper way to review, dissect, and critique a pilot agreement. It's really a convincing and compelling letter. It's quite an impressive letter, but the bottom line is what it is. Mm-hmm. There is a negative effect. Everybody's taxes will go up. And then just to go through this, it will tower over every single structure downtown, and we'll talk about height a little bit more. I think that's a very true statement. It will. Mm-hmm. The city does not have a parking plan that'll work. That's a very true statement. That parking plan has been such a slippery slope, and it just keeps going from bad to worse. The latest is they say, we're going to turn the farmers market into a restaurant. Restaurant requires one parking space per 50 square feet of customer space. That takes everything you've done for parking and blows it up. We haven't even factored that in.
And I hear that there still hasn't been any sort of final plans on how to deal with parking in the winter. Specifically,
I've not seen really any good plan. They've floated some things around. We'll figure it out. There also hasn't been a plan for what you do during construction. Now that's a big deal, especially when you're looking at perhaps maybe a 2-season construction time period.
Right.
Look, people say, you go back to this Mike Kelly letter for a second. Let me just speak to this for just a second. Mike Kelly writes, he said, I am ready to express my wholehearted support. The project has been closely scrutinized by the GEIS process and has passed with flying colors. Well, there's lie number one. It received more comments, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of comments, and most of those just got brushed off. They attack the messenger, they disagree. I'll give you an example. The regional traffic safety director for New York State DOT Region 7 wrote a letter to the city that said that diagonal parking is dangerous to pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles alike, especially in a small city setting such as yours. I would highly, and it said in the strongest language possible, the strongest terms possible, I urge you not to put in angled parking. Now, that was a comment in the GEIS. The response was something along the line of, "Now we think it's fine." So this, to call that, we passed with flying colors.
Right.
Along with the hundreds of other pages of comments where they had a similar sort of dismissive tone. That alley along the river, that's going to be a 65-foot wall next to a wooded riverbank. Okay. So you can put lights in there and everything else, but, that's not a safe feeling. We had one woman who stood up at a planning board meeting, and she said, I am an Army veteran, retired, and I'm a rape victim. And I will tell you, I will not walk down that alley. I won't feel safe. Now, one of the things the planning board has to do is, and the zoning board, is figure out if this is conducive to public health and safety. And you get a woman who stands up and she says that, and she's not the only one. It's obvious. It's obvious it's not safe. It's a very dangerous way to build a 65-foot wall next to a wooded riverbank. And you know, they got a letter from a police officer who said it'll be fine. So that's how they address it. You know, they dismiss it. They just brush it off. Do they actually do anything or change anything or make it better? Oh, we'll put in a couple of lights, but it's fine. It's just fine. So I go back to this. There's lie number one. So this is the Mike Kelly letter. He says, Prime Companies, for its part, is developing quality apartments units all over the Capital District. Will be a good corporate citizen. Okay, you know, that's debatable. Maybe they're great, maybe they're not great. I don't know, but they're an out-of-town developer. None of our other local developers have had this red carpet rolled out for them. But let's move on. A handful of misguided and disgruntled citizens are opposed to the Durkee development project. But the truth is, most of this small group of people don't live in the city and have little or no stake in the city's future. A handful of misguided and disgruntled citizens. So we've had 2,000 people sign a petition. And it's true. Some of them are snowbirds that signed from Florida. Most of them are right downtown. I mean, you know, Christine.
There was also plenty of local business owners on that list.
Yes, most. I would say
most local businesses signed. I did look at the petitions.
But this is what he says. It's a handful of misguided and disgruntled. And, you know, misguided, we don't know what we're talking about. We're just stupid. Mike's smart and we're stupid. And disgruntled citizens, we don't have actually any factual base for our concern. You know, we're trying to look at the parking plan to see if we're going to have enough parking for ourselves, our tenants, and our employees. But we're just disgruntled. Well, no, we have legitimate concerns. We're actually combing through and looking at the plans, trying to be reasonable about it. You know, we're not just trying to pick a fight. Like, hey, we're all for development. I mean, Scott and I, we've spent our career doing development. That's what we do. I mean, I'm a civil engineer. Scott's a surveyor. Scott built this company. That's what we do. We're architects and planners and engineers. We develop, we build, we plan. So to say, you know, we're just, afraid of change. No, we live on change. That's what we do. 40 hours a week, sometimes 50 or 60. And as far as don't live in the city and have little or no stake, I don't want to brag, but I'm part owner of a company that I think is the largest non-governmental employee downtown. We employ 47 people, professional people, with what we hope are decent wages. We buy a lot of sandwiches at lunchtime, okay? But we also need parking. And that's a legitimate concern. Mm-hmm. I'm a business owner. Scott has been down here for 30 years. He built this business. He has a vested interest in this place. We also own the building, Scott and I do.
And this is Scott Allen, right?
Yeah, we have 4 tenants upstairs, 4 apartments. So we pay taxes. So this idea, I live in Saranac. I live in Katyville. Okay? But, you know, Mike wants to dismiss us as just a few handful of misguided and disgruntled citizens. There's other petitions. One of the members of the parking committee started a petition and got 600 signatures.
Yeah. Can you speak on that for a moment? Because that was something that a lot of people were startled by, that someone who is on one of these committees is trying to kind of, you know, wave a flag and say, hey, like, there's an urgent situation here.
It should be, but let me just finish this real quick, and then we can move on from this. I don't want to dwell too long, but I think it's important because, like you said, he's in a position of power, and he's really arguably abusing that power, and certainly being very dishonest. And there is no other project plan for Durkee Street if this does not go through. And that's what we talked about, where we look at the handbook and realize that that's a lie, that you can repurpose the money. And no, you're not going to. And given the COVID virus, nobody is going to criticize you for saying, hey, we really think we need to change directions. We really, before we can talk about revitalizing, let's talk about helping out our existing businesses to even survive. What are we doing to help these restaurants and others? So that's one point. Thanks for letting me cover that. So I really, to the other counselors who have said similar comments, I would say the same thing. PCC and most of the opposition, we're not stupid people. Governor Cuomo, I heard him today. He said New Yorkers understand math, so they're not stupid, and you can't fool them. And you can't fool us. We understand math. We can count parking spaces and parking lots. And yeah, you built 103 spaces at the old Glens Falls Bank. Had to take a bank off the tax rolls to do it. But 103 is not 289. So there's that. And you brought up another. What was the other thing you brought up just now?
So the petition that was started by a member of the parking committee.
Right.
Can you speak to that at all? Do you know anything about that, really?
So, Kate Mahoney is a chiropractor on Brinkerhoff Street. She has been on the parking committee. She's been frustrated, I think it's safe to say, feeling not listened to. Of course she's feeling not listened to. The parking committee is stacked with people appointed by Colin Reed, staff members, and Patrick McFarland in the majority. And then they put some token citizens on there as well. They've had 4 people resign now in disgust because they're so frustrated. So you go in there, they have their agenda, they do these manipulative things, pass these things. They oftentimes pass with the 5 majority people who are shills for the mayor vote one way. And then the 4 citizens vote the opposite way, and it passes 5-4. They move on. And it's a way for the council they were getting a lot of people were showing up and saying, your parking plan is broken. Your parking plan is broken. It doesn't work. It's not good enough. They didn't want to hear that. So this is just my opinion. They created this committee. We got 900 million committees in the city. Every time you turn around, we got another committee. We're going to create a parking committee. And if you have any comments, go give it to them. We don't want to have to hear it. Go tell them. So you go and you tell them, except they're just, like I said, they're just a shill for the city. Everybody who's on there who expresses, any concern just gets outvoted and dismissed. So now you've had 4 people. Kate's been on the verge of resigning herself. You go watch some of those meetings and you hear them say things. This is bullshit. This won't work. This will be a disaster. These are direct quotes from.
I've seen a compilation from there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So she started this petition. One of the things she said is, look, I need short-term parking in front of my business. Now, that's a basic concept. I need short-term parking in front of my business. Now, I don't care, look, Patrick McFarland can walk around with his Shalpista radical utopia walking community, no cars, crackpot textbook that he owns. Now, does that, because he's a counselor who bought a textbook, does that make him smart or dangerous? I'll let you decide. But the fact of the matter is, this is a simple concept. If you're going to go to Iris's for lunch, the Iris's clientele needs to park pretty close. Now, you can do tough guy, suck it up buttercup speech all day long about, yeah, people ought to learn to walk a mile or half a mile or whatever. You know, that sounds all well and good, and maybe you'd be right. Exercise is great, but look, we live in the North Country. So you know what? If you can't park in front of Iris's, you know where you're going. You're going to the Butcher Block or you're going to Anthony's. And that's what happens. That's reality. Okay, so when you take long-term off-street and you move it to long-term on-street, you start handing R47 employees, you make them go buy a permit to park. Okay, fine. We're going to park all up and down City Hall Place, up and down Bridge Street, onto Durkee Street, over to Court Street. We're going to fill this little lot. We're going to be on Trinity. You're not going to be able to park anywhere near Iris's. So that's the same everywhere. It's the same for Kate, and that's what she was saying. You can't just disrupt long-term off-street parking and put it on the road. It isn't complicated. This is simple. Okay, this is simple stuff. This is human nature. You know, I'm an engineer, and I say to people, you can't engineer human nature. Okay, you have to meet people where they're at, and you have to understand human nature. You have to design accordingly. And this idea, and they sit there in these meetings, they say, oh, well, we'll just change the rates. And if demand is higher here, then we'll increase the rate here, decrease it over there, and push people here and there. Look, that sounds nice in theory. The practical application is so far removed from, and, you know, frankly, I'm sorry, and again, not to brag, but I've been doing traffic engineering for a long time, and I see these clowns sitting in these meetings and tossing around these theoretical ideas, and it might sound nice, and they might be convincing themselves. I am shaking my head and laughing my ass off. They sound like a bunch of flaming idiots. And the kid running around counting parking spaces, it's a joke. I mean, he's counting them while the college isn't in session. He's drawing conclusions. That doesn't matter. That doesn't amount to a hill of beans.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen Councilor McFarland post pictures of the lot, of the Durkee Street lot, when, you know, it wasn't full, and going, you know, and just being like, look, it's clear that we don't need it. Look, I took a picture of it when it was empty. And it's like
that to Councilor McFarland being one of those people who walks into the House of Congress with a snowball going, look, there's no such thing as global warming.
That's what it feels like.
I mean, that might convince some people, but you just look like an ass. You really do.
Well,
you know,
we're giving people a lot of reasons to feel angry. But
well, there's reason.
But what can people do? I guess this is a two-part question. I guess in one part, you know, we're waiting to see how these meetings shake out, and I know the project has to go through different steps, of approval. But if I'm, you know, Joe Citizen, what can I do to get involved with this if I feel I oppose this decision that's being handed down? What is there anything I can do?
Well, yeah, there are a couple of things. Now, they're actively trying to make it more difficult for you, but the planning board and zoning board, they each have to render a decision. That it's hard to say if that'll happen at the next meeting. The next zoning board meeting is, let me check the dates here because I don't want to say it wrong. Mm-hmm. I think I have it right here somewhere. You know, look, the Zoom meetings are, well, they're good and bad. It's tough. You know, it's tough to be in a Zoom meeting, and it's not like being in person. It's like so many other things we're dealing with nowadays. But you know, there's some benefits too. You know, you can be sitting there at home and, you know, sipping your drink and having your snacks. And
I think the zoning board meeting, it's Monday, May 4th is the next one.
Yeah, that sounds.
There's a pre-meeting at 6:30, and the regular meeting starts at 7. And it looks like they stream them on YouTube. So I will have a link so people can check those out.
Okay, yeah. So Monday, you're correct. That's this Monday night, May 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've closed the public hearing portion of it. So they're supposedly not going to allow anyone else to speak. But they are receiving written comments up until
I think I have here 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, May 5th.
that sounds right. The planning board will allow them until midnight on Tuesday, May 5th.
That's the planning board.
The planning board's next meeting is regularly scheduled on May 25th.
Okay, and so
So both are allowing written comment. Both are supposedly not going to allow any more public comment. But I think both boards can change their mind.
mm-hmm.
It is up to the board if they want to open or close public comment. They have some authority to do that. In fact, they are the authority to do that. I know the zoning board specifically said that we reserve that right. The planning board, I'm not sure if they specifically stated that or not. But this is your last chance to write a letter, preferably if they are substantive with respect to the actual criteria for review for planning and zoning.
Mm-hmm. There's
links to, if you go to the PCC website or Facebook page, there's links for what that criteria is. So that's most helpful. So, you can do that. The pilot is, my understanding is the pilot has not been approved yet.
Mm-hmm.
So there again, that's the IDA, the Industrial Development Agency, which is a county agency. And I'm not sure what their next scheduled meeting is. And, just to, you can write letters to the editor and, call Wiry and speak up, talk to your neighbor, and talk to people, call your counselor and let them know, I'm opposed to it. And it's not because I'm stupid. It's not because I'm ill-informed. It's because your plan is insufficient. If they came in here, here's the thing. I think that it's sort of a means justifies the ends philosophy. I think I'm trying to understand why they could be so brazen and so dismissive and so stubborn and to change or do anything else. But I think they have subscribed to this silver magical bullet that's going to fix everything. Like if we could just get 114 units, everything will be great. It's like trickle down economics. It'll fix everything. Look, people living downtown is a good thing. Everybody knows that. But, and any planner will tell you that too. You look at the revitalization of downtown Buffalo, where I'm from. It's amazing. It was vacant industry buildings, and now it's built up. But they also had a lot of things of public interest to attract people, give them a reason to want to live downtown. Just building housing doesn't do it. So it's this idea that this magic bullet concept. We will piss off the entire community. We will piss off the downtown business district. We'll screw up pedestrian accessibility and safety. We'll mess up parking. We'll figure all that later. Because right now, we just know we got this silver bullet. If we shoot this out of our gun, everything is going to be grand. But you look around, and you look at what Ed Zukowski built. He built 50 units, about half the size, right over there by the roundabout, right, Route 9 south. And you look at that Skyway Plaza. Did that have any transformational aspect? I mean, do those people go and shop over there at Yondo's? Maybe they do. Probably, I'm guessing most of them don't. Most of them probably shop at their preferred grocery store, whether it's the one right there or not. They all pretty much, drive. You look up on North Market. You look at Set Point, and what's the other one that I'm thinking of? The one just south of McDonald's there.
Oh, I'm not sure what it's called, but
you know the one I'm talking about. And corporate housing, it feels very isolated. Similar, that's a public beach. You could walk along that beach. Nobody feels very inclined to do so. But you could, technically speaking, you could. And when you look at what has that done over there? Edgewater Estates is what I'm thinking of.
Right.
You look at Edgewater Estates and Set Point and some of those other ones. Has there been any economic impact over there? Is there a restaurant? There's a McDonald's. It's been there for 40 years, whatever. You see a bagel shop pop up, laundromat, pizza place, gym, nothing. So what did West Bay Plaza or what did Set Point do? Was that a silver bullet? We gave away our waterfront like they're trying to do now. And I mean, they're leaving a token gesture along. They're leaving a strip, but that's really all it is. It's a token gesture. I mean, Jesse Filer, who's been president of the Saranac River Trail, Friends of, for over 10 years, he stood up at the county planning board. He said, this is not the Saranac River Trail. And don't kid yourself and make it sound like it is, because it's not. So it's not the Saranac River Trail. It's a token. But you look at those other places. Were those silver bullets that fixed everything and made everything grand? No, of course not. So it's integrated design, and it's smart growth, and it's giving people a reason to be downtown. It's giving them a draw that you say, hey, kids, let's get in the car and go to downtown and see that new da-da-da. Go to the farmer's market that's downtown, and then has the ripple effect that people walk to get a coffee or a smoothie or a jewelry or a whatever. That's the thing that wants to bring people downtown. I can't imagine a family in Montreal going, hey, kids, let's get in the car and go see that swell new gated community on the corner of Durkee and Bridge Street.
Right.
I mean, we can't actually go in there and see it, but we could stand on the corner and look from the outside. Come on, let's go. It's not a draw. It's not, any planner is shaking their head and just like laughing and going, no, you guys really, really missed the boat here. Doing a splash pad and a token sidewalk, that might fool some people. That is not the kind of transformational attraction, downtown improvement, makerspace kind of approach that gives people a reason to want to be in downtown. So
makes sense. Well, I feel like we need to wrap things up. Okay. I feel like we've given people a good sort of, at least these things are so big and so complex. Yeah. I feel like there's a dozen other things we could discuss. Yeah. We've been at it for an hour already.
It's good, man. It's a good conversation. I hope we didn't bore people too much. It's interesting, and like I said, we got stuff going on. We have full-time jobs,
Yeah.
But what I've seen is the people who really care about this community. I've been so impressed. So many of us have gotten together, just like scores and hundreds of people. People tell me, we've had so many people. I've had people come up to me and just say, they just write a check to PCC and they go, look, I'm busy, I don't have time, but I oppose this project and I support PCC, and you fight the good fight and do everything you can to stop this and prevent it. And that happens all the time. And it happens from people of all walks, and it happens from a surprisingly, I won't mention names, city employees. And they don't want to get in trouble, but all departments, and they come and they slip you a 20 in cash, and they go, here's my part, do what you can. So we've got doctors, lawyers, planners, architects, engineers, financial planners, bankers, tenants, landlords, employees, employers, We've got so much support from so many people, and when the council reacts in that attacking way, you're stupid,
Very dismissive.
You're not dismissive, you're not a stakeholder, you don't matter. You know what? I thank them for that, because I think that is a big part of why the opposition has just continued to grow and grow and grow and continues to grow. If they were smart, they would have just said, hey, let's talk to people. Let's have conversation. I mean, we're reasonable people. We can have a conversation like, hey, look, we don't love it, but, if you could have this many parking spaces and in this much proximity, and, if you could do a little better on, pedestrian access, which, believe me, there's significant issues, maybe scale it down a little bit, make it a little less domineering. Like we could have, we're very reasonable people. We're very polite and reasonable people. And
it does seem like there's a very desperate grip to keep things the way they are with this plan, and a very a desperate it just feels very desperate to just to die on that hill of we gotta bring this building into the lot, and this has to be the thing we do.
Must be 150 units. Everything else is second fiddle. So, this corporation is whatever we got to do, and everybody else is second priority.
Yeah.
You and me and businesses and everybody. Can I do one last thing before we go? Because this was a point of conversation now that has generated a lot of discussion and a lot of criticism.
Okay.
So, the SUP is a special use permit, and one of the considerations is the height of this building. Does it fit in the neighborhood? Is it compatible with the neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to evaluate that, common sense, you'd like to sort of look at the height of the proposed building and look at the height of the existing building, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't do that in the GEIS. They had a long, fancy, report, but they didn't do that. One of the comments was, could you please show us elevations? Now, I can tell you, I administered planning board for 15 years. I've been on the county planning board for 20. Having an elevation drawing relative to existing buildings is as standard as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to do that. So we don't want to do that. And the comment even said, why don't you do an inventory of height of the buildings up and down Durkee and Bridge? No. We don't need to do that. So they didn't. Okay, fine. So then they went to the special use permit and they put in an application. Well, can you show some elevations that show what, how tall the building is relative to the other buildings? Well, we don't really need to do that. So they didn't do it. And they were asked again and again, and the staff's a little trepidatious. Technically, they're not supposed to put it on the agenda until it's a complete application. But look, it's a politically charged, so cut them a little slack. So what you did get, though, is these sort of little fish in the camera, where if you ever caught a small fish and you go, wow, look how big that is. And you get these weird perspectives where suddenly, like the picture from Bridge Street, the dress code at the corner, which is half the height, looks taller because it's in the foreground versus background kind of thing. So you've seen some of these very deceptive three-dimensional images, but you haven't really seen an image. So we asked and asked and asked. We didn't get it. In my opinion, it shouldn't even be on the agenda without it.
Mm-hmm.
So we finally said, all right, let's see ourselves. Let's do the best we can to figure out. Now, mind you, figuring out the height of a building is not as simple as it sounds. You either got to do it from the ground with some survey equipment, you got to climb up to the roof and drop a tape measure. Mm-hmm. You got to do something to figure it out, because you can stand there and go, well, it looks like it's 30 feet, but it's a little bit tricky if you think about how do we really measure that. But so we tried. Why? Because they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we made in like everything we do, like I said before, we made a pledge to be honest and factual in every statement, every graphic, everything we do, and we've done that. And if we ever don't please call me, contact me. We'll discuss it. If we did something incorrect, we will correct it and take responsibility for any incorrect statement. So we did. I brought it to the zoning board. It was created by some different members. I brought it there and I held it up at the zoning board. I realized later it was a little bit generous. It was a little off. I contacted the chair of the zoning board and I told him that. So it was a little off. We realized that we're making a correction. And I said, I'm going to submit to you the corrected version. Well, oh my gosh, you would have thought that, we were, stealing babies or something, the way they reacted to that. But why did we do that? We did that because they did not. Okay,
right.
So here's what that looks like, okay? I don't know if you can see that on the camera.
Right, so we have the North Country Food Co-op and the
right,
and the buildings surrounding it, the deli and the hemp store.
Right, North Country Co-op.
Yeah, this is Bridge Street.
So this is Bridge Street, right? As if you're standing in the parking lot, looking that way. So this would be City Hall Place up here, / Durkee. There's the dress code right there. And so the dark image shows what the height was. Now, how did we know what the height was? It said in the plan, we didn't have an elevation drawing, so we had to look at the plan. It said 65 feet tall building. Now, that's what the plan said. That's what we used. This shows, and we do have a scale here. Although, yeah, we have a disclaimer at the bottom that says, that it's not to scale. That's a standard sort of architectural disclaimer. But we tried to scale it like I said, as accurately as we possibly could. There's a scale here. It shows that the street is at about 130-foot elevation, mean sea level. And at the top of the building is 195, because we were told it's a 65-foot building. So we scaled that at 65. Then, to the best of our ability, we scaled in the existing buildings. Now, here's the thing. Look, it's bigger, okay? And it's significantly bigger. When you think about how the sun rises and sets and, will the sun ever come inside your window again? You realize it kind of won't. Then that raises some concerns. It doesn't really feel compatible. But here's the thing. What you notice is these are row house style buildings. So if you look at this blue line, you realize these door thresholds all go down by a foot. This is 130, 129. Down here it's 122. Down here it's at 118, 13 feet lower. So as you're going down the hill, these row house 20, 15, 20, 30, this is a little wider, foot wide buildings go lower and lower. It's a style of architecture. It's a row house style. When you build a monster, it's like building a Walmart or a Sears and Roebuck across from that. That's a 200-foot long in this direction by 300-foot long on the Durkee Street. That yellow line is what the finished floor elevation, the first floor elevation is. So while this is 195 feet all the way across, these buildings are going down. So if you were to just do a straight comparison of height versus height, this is actually a 6-story building down here, because that lower level, where there's a parking garage you pull in down here, becomes exposed. So do you see what I mean, Matt, about how that's significant, a row house style architecture versus a monolith? And, that's what you don't get. What do you get from Prime? Let's take a look. This is what they did from, and by the way, very quickly, let me show you this similar one for Durkee Street. Except that, so here's affordable furniture, and that's a big building, no question. That's a 4-story, and it's definitely the biggest on the block. And then going down, but you can see these are more like 3 stories, 2 and 3 stories down here. And again, you see that yellow line. So while these are going down as you go down the block, this monolith keeps that same height. So it begins, the farther down you go, the more it towers up and over.
Right.
And that's a really important point, that you wonder why they won't give up a simple elevation drawing. So you can, why are they, what are they hiding that they don't want to show us that? This, like I say, this type of drawing is as standard comes. So what do they give us? All right, if you can't understand what that is, join the club, because neither can I. You got to stare at it for a little while. What the heck is that? Now you look at what's going on in this picture. First of all, they took the proposed building, they put it behind the Durkee Street, all the existing buildings, even though it would be in front.
Right.
Yeah. Why do they do that? Well, for one thing, you don't get the fact of how this goes downhill, but this first floor begins to tower higher and higher the more you go down the hill. Number two, it allows them, that's a Margaret Street building. That's the Durkee Street building there. That's a building on Margaret Street. It gets worse. Check this out. What's that? That's the steeple, the bell tower on the First Presbyterian Church on Brinkerhoff Street. What in God's name business does that have on this elevation drawing except to tell you, oh, look, it's not even as tall as that? Now, what that says to me, though, is, for Christ's sake, are you telling me that what you're building is actually about as tall as that tower?
Right.
On Brinkerhoff Street,
and that's the one with the big green cross, in case anyone doesn't know.
Yeah, across from the Strand Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what is that to it? So you see the deception at play. So what did we do? We did this. We tried to be as simple,
right,
as straightforward, and scaled as we possibly could. We took some liberties using a dark shading. Okay, fine, but we tried to be as factual and straightforward as we could, just to get a perspective to compare proposed and existing. We got this out of them at the 11th hour. They just finally produced this, and I think it was, I don't know if there's a date on here. Also, what they did is they presented one at the planning board meeting Monday. I can't find it online. If it's there, I see all the documents. They've got a lot of documents. I can't find it. Maybe it's there. I missed it, but I'm going to say it's not. If someone can find it, tell me. They also apparently changed the building down to 61 feet and 2 inches. So they took 3 feet, 10 inches off the building and then used that to call us liars because we showed it at 65. Okay, well, look, hey, that was, your drawing said 65. We used 65. But this is, and again, as we talk about, like, you're trying to deal with the facts, the issues for people to make objective evaluations, but at the same time, you're constantly dealing with this deception, and at the same time being accused of being deceptive when you're not. You're being as honest and straightforward and fact-based as you possibly can, trying to be as polite as we can too, and respectful, but sometimes it's a strain. So while you try to stick to just the facts, you find yourself just having these head shaker moments where you're like, what the hell is going on? When we've got the church steeple from Brinkerhoff on this elevation drawing to tell us it's not that bad.
That's crazy.
What kind of people are we dealing with here? Yeah, it's a real head shaker, but I thought that was worthy of taking a minute. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. I did not. I hadn't seen those side by side. I feel like I have come into contact with both those images, but it. Anyway, all right. I think that's as good as a note as I need to end on.
Okay.
It'd be great to be able to have you back eventually to give another update as things progress.
Yeah, I'd love to, Matt. Thank you for taking the time and for having me. It's been a pleasure as always. And I hope people listen, because it's not quite as sexy and exciting as some of the things, but it's our home, it's where we live, and it matters, and it's kind of a one chance, now or never.
It's an issue that people are really passionate about, so I think they'll listen. And if anybody has any questions, hit us up, leave comments, and we'll also have links to a lot of the things we talked about. So in case you need to dig a little bit deeper, that'll be all available for you somewhere down below this video.
And lots of love to local community businesses that are struggling and people, and a big, big thank you to all the first responders, healthcare, and frontline workers that are out there keeping us safe. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
Agreed. All right. So long.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Trashburg Podcast Network, the trashiest podcast network in the North Country.